finger got jammed in the doors like I've been here before.
Hey, how's it going? This is Joe and Tell, and today let's take a look at the Sony HT-A9, a wireless Dolby Atmos capable home theater system that claims to calibrate itself regardless of where you place the speakers. Let's get into it. So can these Sony HT-A9s really do what they claim to do? How do they compare to a real home theater system? And who are these for? These are the questions I'll answer in this video. I plan on making a few videos on these speakers. This one is a subjective review based on my listening impressions and having used these in various rooms in the past few months. I'll also have a video with objective measurements showing which modes have the best frequency response. For those of you who love sound demos, I'll have a binaural sound demo comparing these to my actual home theater consisting of 12 speakers and 3 subwoofers. Link below. So first off, shout out to Stop the FOMO for letting me check out his HT-A9 setup. Sorry it took a while, buddy. He also brought over the Sony SA-SW5 wireless subwoofer. I have a video of me setting these up in my living room and the process was pretty simple. I think this is a good use case because this is not an ideal scenario just because of the layout. But yeah, maybe more similar to a typical living room than my dedicated theater. All right, front right, front left, rear right, and right surround. It made me realize that although these aren't truly wireless in the sense that you still have to plug in the power cable, I think that most homes will likely have plugs in convenient enough locations to set these up. If not, a simple power extension cable will do the trick. If I had to set up and wire traditional speakers, it would be much trickier since I would have to route cables through walls or have a long run from the rear speakers to the front where my AVR sits. The calibration was straightforward, and as someone who's a stickler for proper calibration, I think they do a very good job of level matching and time aligning each speaker relative to the other. There are settings to move the soundstage up, down, forward, backward, left, and right, but I found it to not work as I had hoped. I preferred to keep everything in the center. It does ask how far the subwoofer is, and I did set that accordingly. The first thing I noticed was how well it created spatial effects. This is the best I've ever heard height channels virtualized. I ran several tests including Dolby Atmos helicopter demo where only the height channels are used, and it did a convincing job making it sound like the helicopter was flying in circles above me. No soundbar has ever come close. One thing to make note of is although the calibration works well, it can't perform miracles. The more optimally you place the speakers, the more potential for optimal sound. I think that these would be extremely useful for those looking for a home theater setup without the hassle. This is great if you have an ultra short throw projector like I do and you can't set up a center channel. These do a pretty good job of creating a pretty convincing phantom center image. As far as looks, I think they look okay, but perhaps a bit uninspired. Nothing is bad, but nothing is great either. These do have up-firing speakers that work well, but there's currently no way to adjust the height effect volume. I hope they change that in a future firmware update. These also have a few sound presets, but I found that cinema was the most accurate, followed by music, and the worst being standard. There is an auto setting, but I'm not sure how it determines which setting to switch to, so I'd recommend keeping it in cinema mode. My video with objective measurements confirm all of this, link below. In all of the modes, I felt that the HT-A9 was a bit bright, and I wish they would just give us a simple bass and treble tone control to tame the highs a bit. The other thing is I would highly recommend turning off the Immersive AE enhancement, which tries to add more height effects at the expense of messing up imaging and tonality. My measurements also confirm that, and it seems to create some audible comb filtering effect, which changes the timbre. You may also want to turn off Advanced Auto Volume, which is basically a dynamic range compressor. It makes loud things quieter, and it makes quiet things louder, but that's not what you always want for movies and music. Experiment and see when it's appropriate and when it isn't. Now let's talk about bass.
You can feel the energy through the vibrations. You're witnessing hip-hop's beautification. Yep, we represent a unified nation.
The SA-SW5 is not very impressive, yet it's relatively expensive. As of right now, your only options are the SA-SW5 or the smaller SA-SW3. I really wish there was an option to use some kind of wireless transmitter to allow the use of a third-party sub. One issue is the sub just doesn't play very deep. You'll hear bass, but it's just not deep enough for movies. I would say that claiming it can play down to about 45 Hz is generous considering it has a huge peak around 70 Hz. You really want a subwoofer that is flat across the entire range, but this one definitely is not. The other issue is the crossover between the main speakers and the sub is a bit too high around 120 Hz, making the sub easy to localize. If the crossover was lower around 80 Hz, then that would not be an issue. Perhaps the drivers in the HT-A9 are too small, or they didn't want to make the enclosure larger. Either of those two options would have resolved the issue. These can get surprisingly loud, so perhaps using DSP to allow them to play lower at the sacrifice of loudness is another option. Maybe dynamic EQ would give the best of both worlds.
Racing, pacing, every day spent in the basement, blazing and building like a mason or chilling like a
Overall, I would say I was impressed more with the spatial effects and the calibration rather than the overall tonality. I think they have room to improve when it comes to being able to customize the bass and treble and height level controls. I wish they would let us use a third-party subwoofer. With those changes, I think this could be a very convincing home theater setup for most people. It does a lot of things right, and most of the things it doesn't do perfectly can be fixed with software. Can it replace a full-on home theater setup? Not yet. They are narrowing the gap though. Maybe the next version of the HT-A9 will have larger speakers that can get down to 80 Hz at least. One thing I would have loved to see is support for Auro 3D upmixing. It currently supports Dolby Atmos, DTS-Neural X, and Sony's proprietary 360 surround. Out of those, the Dolby speaker virtualizer sounded the worst by far. My measurements confirm this, and I wonder if there's just some kind of bug that's causing that. It doesn't make sense what it was doing. DTS-Neural X seemed to maintain the proper tonality while still enhancing the height effects. This is the hub where the HDMI in and out are, and you'll see some other options. This is also where the IR remote controls are received. I didn't get into the other streaming features it has to allow you to stream from various music services. This also has Amazon Alexa support, but I didn't test that. The reason being is that you're likely to use this with a TV or streaming stick that has support for casting or native apps for those streaming services. Make sure to check out my other videos on the HT-A9. I have one with my objective measurements and another one with a binaural sound demo comparing it to my home theater system. Right now, let's go ahead and put these on the speaker leaderboard. All right, so here we are at the speaker leaderboard with the Sony HT-A9. These are powered speakers. Where do they place? So a lot of these are studio monitor speakers, so those will be more accurate. They'll have more bass because they're bigger, but this also accounts for functionality, and these do a lot of things that are pretty cool. So I would say taking all of that into account, kind of weighing it, so some of these will sound better but have less features, I would say I would put these maybe right here below the Dynas, which I think sound a lot better, have a lot more bass, but way less features, but I think they kind of balance each other out. There you go. So these are currently $1,800 for the set, which is kind of not a fair comparison because a lot of these are a pair of speakers. And so, you know, I'm just going to place them here just, let's see here. Just because, kind of a weird comparison, but there you have it. And then last but not least, let me place them right here for a second. Best overall sound quality, regardless of the price. And I would say tonality, which is something that I talked about. Tonality wise, it would go somewhere maybe, these are all studio monitors, so they're tonally very accurate. Maybe somewhere around here. Totem Can Play, Canto Tuck, maybe somewhere around there. And let's place the Sony SA-SW5. These sell for a bit under $700, so not cheap. And I would say compared to these others, it would have to, unfortunately, go, let's see, below the Sonos sub, which actually was able to reach down to 20 Hertz. As far as best overall subwoofer, let's see what we have here. I would probably place these, a lot of these can actually play a little bit lower. Some of them have DSP, so I would say, you know, I'd put these somewhere around here maybe. Yeah, somewhere around there. Anyway, that's it. If you have any questions about the HT-A9, feel free to comment below and I'll do my best to answer it. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. That's it. Take care. Bye-bye.
I'm a raisin in the sun, doing it the way it's done. Flip phrases, run, cadence as sharp as razors. Off the pages, my thoughts are dangerous. Like I popped a banger from an awkward angle. I go into it and get intimate to get them interested. When my written's rip, I put the grind with the grit and put the rhyme with the wit. My mind is fit, my lines hit hard enough to make a diamond split. What time is it?
They got cheap knockoff for sale. I see the future like George Orwellian theory. Hear me, William Cooper with the alien. Old school, I roll with the Homo sapien. They saying slow down, oh, you gotta break them in. 1,240 septillion. I'm thinking big, my what's really then? Do it for my great grandbaby, staying militant.
Everybody right there, tell me where you're from. Bob your head so hard till it turn you dumb. Put your lighter in the air till it burn your thumb. Put your lighters in the air till it burn your thumb. You want it, I'ma serve you some.
till your fingertips brown. I'm getting lit now, then I'm finna get down. If your lights goes out, rekindle it now. If a sucker right next to you, hit him in the lip, pow. I'm just joking, don't get your pennies in the bunch. I like the party up like putting brandy in the punch. I'm crafty in the clutch, Abby in the guts. With the chick that's looking at me like Stabby in the guts. It's Ad Plus, the man nuts, ask him. Alien genes, I bet my grandson has them. In high demand because the man's so handsome. Put your hands up and flick your lights up for the anthem.
Welcome my people, return to the regal. Follow me through the entrance to the cathedral. Put your lighters up so you can see through the darkness. Hyro liven up any proceedings you start with. To all the brothers that have my back in crack wars. Whenever I rap, we all shine like black stars. Proud to be from the Bay, we innovators. Let your lighters burn just like incinerators.
Everybody right there, tell me where you're from. Bob your head so hard till it turn you dumb. Put your lighter in the air till it burn your thumb. Put your lighters in the air till it burn your thumb. Huh? You want it, I'ma serve you some. Look, I don't even care if you ain't heard this song. Turn it up, represent where you're from. Put your lighters in the air